Millions of viewers from India and Africa are welcome to this new episode of Africa Rising. Myself, Suresh Chandra Agarwal, the host of this program. Last week, there was I should say, some problem at a hostel in Ahmedabad, in India, over performing namaz in a hostel room. Then the government understood what was wrong there, and the government has taken some action. Everybody must know that Africa is going to be a very big market for education abroad. At present, there are more than 600,000 students studying abroad in this and that country. India is, of course, is a low price destination for education abroad for African students. But every country must understand the importance of African students as far as the education market is concerned. So let's have a look at this small video.
There are 5 foreign students who were attacked at a university in Gujarat after around 2 dozen people barged into the hospital. This is a story that has been reported from Gujarat University's International Boys Hostel located in Ahmedabad. These students have sustained injuries after they were attacked by a mob late on Saturday night. The police have registered an FIR and are investigating the incident. The students, 2 of whom were severely injured, are recovering at a hospital and their condition is said to be out of danger. 25 men have been booked for beating up students.
उनकी बोलाचाली हुई और मारामारी हुई। उसके बाद उन्होंने पत्थर फेंके हैं, रूम्स में तोड़फोड़ की है, बाहर से जो लोग आए हैं। इसमें पुलिस ने तुरंत कार्रवाई की है और आधे घंटे में लोकल पुलिस इंस्पेक्टर भी आ गया है। FIR हमने तुरंत दाखिल कर ली है 20 से 25 लोगों के विरुद्ध में, और इसकी पूरा जो भी लोग इसमें इन्वॉल्व हैं उनके खिलाफ पुलिस कड़क कार्रवाई करेगी, उनको तुरंत गिरफ्तार किया जाएगा।
The next video is a talk from Indian Foreign Minister. He is talking about that India is betting on rising of Africa. There is no doubt that every country is taking note of it, that now Africa is rising. So is the Foreign Minister of India. So let's listen to him. It's a small video.
Africa is rising, and India is betting on Africa's rise. We have a shared past, not always a happy history. India, as I said, the most populous country in the world, the 5th largest economy, a $4 trillion approximate GDP. For us, the reordering of the world, the rebalancing, the multipolarity of the world will not be complete until Africa takes its due place. Having spoken about India-Nigeria, let me make a larger point in respect of Africa. Africa is rising, and India is betting on Africa's rise. We are betting on Africa's rise because by any objective assessment, today there is so much going for Africa in terms of demography, in terms of resources, in terms of ambition, in terms of increasingly of policy alignments that clearly portend a very different, a much more positive future in the very short term. Now, we are betting on Africa because, as the President of NIBC reminded us, we have a shared past, not always a happy history, not between us, but between us and some other people. But it is a history which has engendered an enormous solidarity. And that solidarity today makes me say very clearly that for us, when we speak about a changing global order, we clearly today, India, as I said, the most populous country in the world, the 5th largest economy, a $4 trillion approximate GDP. For us, the reordering of the world, the rebalancing, the multipolarity of the world will not be complete until Africa takes its due place. And we speak of it often certainly in the diplomatic world, in terms of, there will be reform of the United Nations, who will have a seat, how will it go? And all of that is very important. But I would say to all of you that rebalancing, reordering a new global order will only happen when the core of it is economic, which is the rise of Africa has to be the economic rise of Africa. Now, that obviously presents choices, because it is very difficult to go up in the global order by being a market for others, or just by being a provider of resources. So the value that India brings, and it's a value today, I think, which is reflected in the room and in the conversations that will happen, which is how do we today invest in Africa? How do we manufacture in Africa? How do we produce in Africa? How do we value add in Africa? And I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is really the that is the special nature of the relationship today between India and Africa. That we are prepared today to partner in this range of activities of production, of value add, of research, of localization, of the employment which will come with it, and of addressing the socio-economic needs which are very similar to us. We are all on the same journey today. Some of us are a little bit ahead, but at the end of the day, everything that we are going through currently, and we have been through and we will go through, are exactly what is your journey as well. So my message to you today is, at a time, especially after the COVID, when we have all discovered the dangers of depending on faraway geographies for our basic needs, because we all had that anxiety for those years, when everything which we assumed internet global trade will provide very smoothly did not arrive on our shores. That today, if there is a push for local production, for, as I said, greater value add, if we need more resilient and reliable supply chains, if we have to share technology, India is your partner. And these are not nice words to be said at a conference. The proof of our commitment are in 200 development projects across the continent, and another 70, 80 which are underway.
When we talk of Africa rising, some people doubt whether it is real or only some hype is created. So, an economist from Africa, this video is 7 years old, she is speaking on this subject. So, it is really happening now. The average continental growth is around 6%, which is more than developed countries. So, there is no doubt that by 2050, Africa as a continent is going to have a GDP of 29 trillion. So let's listen to this economist. She speaks very nicely, and she will give you a lot of confidence that let's invest in Africa. So let's have a look at this video.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm glad you don't want my job. The average life of finance ministers is 2 years. It's been calculated. I thought about how to grab your attention today. We've just sitting here, I've learned so much. And I decided there are two things. One is I have to transport you from all these cold Arctic things you've been looking at to a very warm, fuzzy continent. The second is that I don't have any props like my first TED Talk, so you actually have to look at me. Now, I'm just going to update you on a TED Talk I gave in 2007, which was talking about the other Africa of business opportunities. My talk is on Africa, reality or hype? Africa rising, reality or hype? Let me go back first to the 80s and 90s and the image of Africa that everyone had and still has to a large extent, which is an Africa of conflict, an Africa of disease, an Africa of lost economic opportunities, an Africa of aid, an Africa declining economically where nothing is happening. That's the picture that everyone had, and that was the true picture. But the policymakers on the African continent learned a lot of lessons from what happened in the 80s and 90s. And in the 2000s, launched a series of reforms that designed to bring the continent back up on its feet. And I'm here to just update you and say that a lot of changes have happened since a lot of these reforms were put in place. First of all, on the continent, most countries are now democracies and have gone through 1 or 2 cycles of elections. Conflicts are down, and the economic indicators are looking up. And that's where this Africa Rising phenomenon came out of. Let's look at debt. We used to have a debt as a percent of our gross domestic product of 100% and more in most countries. Today it's 32%, which is better than what you have in the US and Europe and most other places, thanks to the good work that was done in forgiving Africa's debt in the 2000s. Let's look at inflation. We had an inflation rate on average on the continent of about 48%, and now we're down to about 6%. And growth that used to be less than 2% is now about 5.5%, and the IMF is even forecasting 6%. Foreign direct investment has gone from $9 billion in the year 2000 to $50 billion today, and it's double the amount of aid going on the continent. 50% of our people, people in our urban areas now have access to the internet. And internet use has gone from 4 million people in 2000 to 167 million today, thanks to the mobile phone. So that is what is happening. My country, Nigeria, is a good example of this. We've been growing at about 7% per annum for the past decade. A third of our young people have access to the internet commerce, and other modern things that you take for granted are really taking hold on this continent. So I just want to say that there's a reality to what is happening, and that opportunities, that the continent is a continent of opportunity. 1/3 of the population are now classified as middle class by the African Development Bank, and investors are realizing this. In fact, I want to say that the boat of investment and opportunity is leaving for the continent, and those investors who don't join now and wise up to this will be left behind. But let us just also look. So these are all the opportunities, but the high part of it that I want to caution is that there are also challenges. What are these challenges? We have the challenge of inadequate infrastructure, be it air, for connectivity by air within the continent, ports, roads, rail, and power, most of all. Inadequate infrastructure. We have rising inequality. With our growth has come inequality, so that the well-off people are the ones who are getting most of the gains, and we have people who are increasingly being excluded. We have the challenge of unemployment. Up to 1/3 of our people, of our young people in most of our countries are unemployed, and if we don't solve that problem by improving the quality of growth, it would come to haunt us in the next 5 to 10 years. So these are the challenges that we see. But we can also look at these challenges as opportunities. If there's inadequate infrastructure, what does it mean? It means there's room for the private sector to invest and to partner with government to improve this. If we have rising unemployment, what does it mean? It means we need to look at the quality of those sectors where we invest. We need to diversify our economies so that we can get people working in agriculture, in the housing sector, even in the creative arts. These are the opportunities that we see. And so I want to just tell you that where you see a challenge, inequality, it means we have to improve our tax system so that we can redistribute to those at the bottom end of the ladder and make sure they're included. So for me, even those challenges represent opportunities for the continent. And I'm here to invite you to say, join us, work with us. Work with us to take advantage of all the opportunities to ensure that Africa remains a continent that can contribute to this world and continues rising with the reality of the world. Thank you.
The next video is related to Ghana, a very good country in the western region of Africa. This country has a population of, say, around 35 million, and its per capita income in nominal terms is at par with India, I can say. And the country has a very rich history and the country speaks English very well these days. English is the official language there. So let's have a look at the history of Ghana in this video. And before you go for it, let me remind you, please subscribe this channel if you have not, and also forward this episode to your friends and family. Thank you for watching.
The Ghana Empire, otherwise known as the Empire of Gold, was an ancient civilization that thrived in West Africa between the 4th and 13th centuries AD. This powerful empire had a major role to play in West African history, establishing itself as an important trading and cultural hub, while its complex and sophisticated society had an enduring regional legacy. The Ghana Empire's roots are steeped in mystery and legend, with the bulk of historical knowledge stemming from oral and archaeological records and the writings of Arab travelers of the time. The Ghana Empire was in what is now southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. It established itself as a cluster of chiefdoms, which eventually became unified under a central leadership. The term Ghana traditionally means the title of the ruler, rather than the name of the empire itself. The empire's name and the area it covered were different from the current nation of Ghana. Oral tradition holds that the establishment of the empire was ascribed to a mythical figure called Dinga Sisa. According to some traditions, Dinga Sisa is portrayed as a semi-divine or heroic figure with supernatural abilities that allowed him to assert his leadership and found the empire. During the 1st centuries AD, when trans-Saharan trading picked up momentum, the North African Berbers and later the Arabs built up contacts with the region. The accounts of these travelers provide some of the first written references to the Ghana Empire. These encounters partly influenced the growth and consolidation of the empire. The Ghana Empire's geographical location meant that it could control the trans-Saharan trade routes. The region abounded in gold, and controlling this precious resource, along with the opportunity to mediate between the northern salt-producing areas and the southern gold-producing regions, positioned the Empire of Ghana as a dominant trading force. As it grew in wealth and influence, the Ghana Empire started to annex neighboring territories and subdued various ethnic groups and tribes, cementing its position as the region's dominant empire. Society in the Ghana Empire was structured hierarchically, topped by the king, known as the Kayamagan. The nobility, wealthy merchants, artisans, farmers, and slaves were underneath him. The king enjoyed near absolute power and was considered a semi-divine figure. He oversaw maintaining order, justice, and the well-being of the kingdom. Although the king's power was highly centralized, there was a well-established bureaucracy to help run the empire. The conquered territories were ruled by appointed governors, whereas the central territories were more closely administered. The main city and capital of the empire is believed to have been Kumbai Sala, an important trading and political center. In fact, it was divided into two parts, a royal area and a commercial district, with the latter predominantly held by Muslim merchants. Whilst traditional African beliefs prevailed in the Ghana Empire, Islam also had a strong foothold, especially among the elite and merchants. This targeted acceptance of Islam allowed the Empire of Ghana to develop favorable trade relations with North African Muslim states. This coexistence of African traditions and Islamic influences in Ghana made for a diverse and prosperous society, where trade and diplomacy were as important as tradition and religion. The social and political legacy of the Ghana Empire continues to be a crucial piece of West Africa's complex tapestry of history. The Ghana Empire was a dominating authority in West Africa for several centuries, and was often embroiled in military campaigns, whether defensive or expansionist. Towards the end of the 11th century, the Almoravids, a Berber religious and military movement from the Sahara, started to expand southwards. It is widely acknowledged that some kind of clash or series of skirmishes took place between the Almoravids and the Ghanaian Empire, but the specific details are the subject of debate among historians. Some believe that the Almoravids did invade and occupy Ghana, while others argue that their impact was more mercantile and religious than military. The consensus, however, is that these confrontations with the Almoravids and the subsequent commercial developments contributed to the gradual decline of the Ghana Empire. As well as the Almoravids, other burgeoning groups and empires in the region, such as the Mali Empire, started to exert pressure on Ghana. Eventually, Mali in particular overshadowed Ghana in power and influence in West Africa. The decline and subsequent demise of the Ghana Empire did not stem from a single event, but rather from several internal and external factors that took place over the course of centuries. The Ghana Empire's economic system depended heavily on the trade in gold and salt. As time went by, new trade routes began to emerge, undermining the role of the Ghanaian Empire as a crucial go-between. Evidence has shown that climate change may have affected the region, with the Sahara Desert spreading, rendering some areas less hospitable and impacting on agriculture and trade. The gradual embrace of Islam by the elite and merchants influenced the empire's political and social dynamics. Whilst Islam offered a bridge to North Africa, it also brought new ideas and practices that may have upended established traditions and governance in Ghana. The Ghana Empire had been effectively supplanted by the rising Mali Empire by the end of the 13th century. Whilst the Ghana Empire no longer existed as a dominant political entity, its political and social legacy continues to be a crucial part of West Africa's fascinating and fertile history.